Hello everybody, welcome to a new episode of Unity 2D tutorials for a tower defense game. In this episode we're gonna learn how to spawn enemy prefabs in one of those 4 points designated in these yellow stuff. Here we go. We got 1, 2, we got 3, and so on. But before we continue, I want to do a shout out to Chinese McNugget. He's one of my Discord channel members who has shown a really good taste of art recently, and you'll know what I mean when you see this slideshow. Enjoy! Alright, so the first thing we need to do is we need to determine where do we need to spawn the enemies. So as far as I can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, let me just click again, 1, 2, 3, 4 points, which should not be a difficult thing to do. So what we need to do is we need to create an empty game object. Let's use the same here. Let's actually call it spawn enemies. Let's make sure to zero everything out. Good. So the first thing we need to do is we need to put this point in the place where we want to spawn the enemy. To make it look nicer for you to know where it's indicating, let's use a different gizmo. I'm going to go with this one here. Good, good. So you can move it manually like this, but I prefer if you snap it by pressing and holding Control. So this one makes sure that you snap it with the proper values. So let's keep holding Control and put it in the middle of the cube. Control D, put it down here. Control D, which means duplicate. Control D again, and the last point is here. Let's name them P1, P2, P3, and P4. So we finished the first setup. The second thing is we need to create the script. And for that, let's go into the folder of scripts, right click, let's call it enemy spawner. Okay, let's double click. Hopefully it doesn't take as much as my last one. Here we go. Yep. If you notice, I changed from Visual Studio to Visual Studio Code because it's just lighter. I don't need tons of stuff loading. Okay. So what do we need for the enemy spawner? First of all, we need to have the enemy, which is going to be prefabs. And then for this game, I chose 2 enemies. I'm going to show you in a second. The second thing we need to do is we need positions, which are the points that we just created. And the third thing we need to do is have some sort of interval, which means like every X amount of seconds will spawn enemies. So let's start with enemy prefabs, and then enemy spawn root points, and then enemy spawn interval. That's good. So for the prefabs, we're going to go with public list game object, call them prefabs. That's good. And then for the spawn points, it's going to be technically a list of transforms. Why transforms? Because they are the ones who are rootly in control of positions. Let's call them spawn points. It's fine. And the interval is going to be float. Spawn interval. By default, let's keep it as 2. Okay. What we need to do is we need to make a method, call it start spawning. By default, our game will not spawn any enemy, but let's say before starting any wave of enemies, you have to prepare. So during that preparation, you have no spawning of enemy. So what we're gonna do is as soon as that period is done, we're gonna trigger this method, which gonna in itself trigger the spawning and intervally spawn enemies. So what we're gonna do here, call the spawn. I want to say timer or handler. I want to say coroutine. You know what? Coroutine. So for coroutine, we need to use enumerator. With this one, we can use we can wait for seconds, which is gonna be the best solution for our choice here. So let's call it spawn delay. Okay. Whoops. Spawn delay. Let's open close this. And the first thing we need to do is we need to call the spawn method wait x actually wait spawn interval recall the same routine. That's going to be everything. If you see this red line, that means that's fine because I haven't put any yield. So if you make an enumerator, you have to put some yield methods in here. Okay, so let's start from the scratch. So let's say you finish spawning, you finish putting all your towers and then the game starts. So we call this method, and this method is gonna in itself call this coroutine. So we're gonna write start coroutine spawn delay. We're done from here. Now we come back to this method. And this method we have to call the spawn method. So we haven't created it yet in here, but I'm gonna create it in here called spawn enemy. Let's keep it empty for now. So we can actually just call it spawn enemy. This will take care of spawning the enemy in its proper position. And then after spawning the enemy, we have to go yield, return, new, and wait for seconds. So the seconds will be this amount, which by now it's only 2. But let's say if your game progresses and it becomes more difficult, you can decrease it. Alright, the next thing we need to do is we need to reset the whole process. That means we have to call it this thing again, which is going to be the same as this method. So this will keep it going in a loop. And then if you want to stop this, all you have to do is have to go stop all coroutine. And this will stop everything. But this will do it maybe later on, another episode. So here, when we call the spawn enemy, we're going to have to do the spawning mechanic here. First of all, let's say we have 2 enemies and 4 points. I'm going to use the random method here. So randomize the enemy spawned and then randomize the spawn point, then instantiate the enemy prefab. That's everything that you need to do. Simple as that. So for randomizing, Unity has a built-in method. Let's just make a new integer, call it enemy random, okay, no, random prefab equals id, yd, you'll see. So Unity has something called random, and it has multiple stuff. So it has something called range, and what this does is, let me show you. It technically returns this says an integer, but a float, we're using integer. It returns a number between the minimum and the maximum exclusive, which means if we put here 0 and 10, it's going to return a number between 0 and 9. So what we need to do here, we need to make sure that we need to put the whole range from 0 to the maximum number of the prefabs that we have. For me, I have only 2 now, but let's say your game has 7 prefabs. So you have to make it dynamic. All we need to do is take the prefab here, list, put it dot count. What this means is, let's say you have 2 only, so it's going to become 2, right? Internally, which means it's going to return between 0 and 1, which is perfectly done for this list. And after we got the prefab ID, we're going to need to take the ID of the spawn point. I'm going to copy and paste the same mechanic, but I'm going to call it random spawn point ID. In here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to randomize a number between 0 and the count of the list, which is going to be the spawn point list. In our case, it's 4. So it's going to return between 0 and 4. And, sorry, 0 and 3. Because it's exclusive, which is exactly what we need. So we got the prefab ID and the spawn point ID. All we need to do is spawn that prefab in that spawn root ID. I know I've been saying spawn a lot, but that's it. I'm gonna have to create game object dot spawned enemy equals instantiate, and then we're gonna have to go create prefabs. Yeah, access the prefabs and pass in the random ID, which is gonna be either 0 or 1, and then we're gonna have to go spawn points and then access the random value, which is going to be everything that we need. Now we have these points, we have this game object spawned as a child of this transform. And I think that's everything actually. So let's save the script and go back to Unity, let it load. And then we can create the primitive game object prefabs for the enemy. Let's go to this point and just simply create the sprite of the enemy. I haven't introduced you guys to the enemies. It's gonna be this B. I don't know if it's gonna be visible for you, but I'm gonna show it in here. So let's put the let's put the B in here, and you can see something is off. It's because you have to put this over here. Oh, actually, I know it's wrong. The spawn, what's it called? The spawn layer is different. Towers UI. Yep. So what we need to do is we need to add a new layer. Let's call it enemy, and we have to put it in the same place as you can put it here or here because it should be over the ground and over the tower, doesn't matter. So let's put it here. And what we need to do, we need to choose the enemies layer. You'll be wondering, why does it look so small? That's fine, because if I want to show you this, so let's click on this guy. So this guy has this sprite, which also looks small here, but we've changed the pixel per unit here. It was 100, I made it 40, because it's unified throughout all the stuff that we have. For example, this guy, and then we got this tower guy, fall, also 40. So we have to make sure that all your sprites, if they are the same size, they should have the same pixel per unit value. So let's call this enemy 1, and let's go to the B. We have all those sprites. Let's make sure they are 40. That's good. So here we go. This is our first enemy, B. See how cute? Okay, so we finished the first enemy prefab. Let's make a prefab out of it. Let's go to the prefab folder. We've got the enemy. Actually, what I need to do is, never mind, nothing. So let's drag and drop it here. We got enemy. What we need to do else is create the second enemy. I'm gonna put it here. Actually, let's spawn it in this next one here so we can see it. So we made this next sprite. Let's set it as enemy, and let's assign the second enemy from here. Where was it? Here we go. So we got the bee and the slug. So the slug also we have to select all its sprites, make it 40, and let's assign the first value. So here we go. If you think it's too small or too big, you can play with. For example, I think the slug looks a little bit smaller than it should be. So I made it 30 because the sizes are different, more or less. Yeah, so this one is like almost 40 pixels. This one is like 30. So we got the second enemy, which is the slug. Let's make a prefab out of it and put it here. And then let's remove them from here. What we need to do is we need to add the enemy spawner. right here. And I like it to be in the same place like here. That's fine. Let's expand the list. Let's drag and drop the first enemy into the prefabs and the second enemy. So we got them saved as a list. We need to assign the spawn points, which are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And one tip you need to know is if you want to drag and drop multiple objects into a specific script or place of inspector, instead of just drag and dropping one by one, you can just select the script that you want everything to be dragged to and lock it. And then whenever you click anywhere else, the inspector will stay on that game object. Then what you need to do is you need to drag and drop all of them from top to bottom and put them in a proper place. And then you can unlock and then go back to the script. Here we go. So we got the spawn points and we got the spawn interval. Now what we need to do is save the scene, Control S. And the next thing we need to do is we need to enable the spawning here. Let's get back to our game manager, see what other things we can do here. So we have the health. What we do from the start is we initiate the health system and the currency system. I want to do this thing where I'm gonna make a delay. What did I click? Wave start delay, right? This is totally random. You can make it as however you want. Wave start delay. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna wait for X seconds, start the enemy spawning. See, that's fine, but we forget to do one thing. We need to make a singleton out of this script. It's quite easy. Simplest way to do it is go enemy public static enemy spawner, the same name of the class, and you can name it whatever you want. I like to name it instance. And then let's use the awake method because it's the earliest one to set this instance to this object. So this will make sure that we have an access to the script by using instance. Okay, let's go back here. Even though we don't need to make it, but we can just go get component because the game manager is in the same game object as the spawner enemy. But let's do it anyway. So, oops. So we have to go yield return new wait. I'm gonna put it as 4 seconds, all right? And then we're gonna go with get component enemy spawner dot start spawning. In case if it was not in the same game object, all you need to do is go enemy spawner dot instance dot start spawning. So you can go either this or that. Since it's for me it's in the same game object, I'm gonna go with the upper one. We have an issue here. Oh yes. We have to use the generic. Or no. Yeah, the collection, yes. Good. So what's gonna happen now is the game is gonna start and then we're gonna have to, let's make it just 2 seconds. I don't wanna wait too much. It's gonna wait 2 seconds and then start despawning. If I'm not mistaken, everything should be clear and dandy. Okay, I cannot hover over my face, but that's my face. Okay, let's click play. I want to put this screen on the side so we can see them because the enemies are going to spawn outside here. So we're not going to see them in the game view rather than just the scene view. So here we go. So the game is loading. Here we go, it started. So 1, 2, here we go. First enemy, you can see. Second enemy, same place actually. Third enemy, same place. It's the randomness is gonna happen. And here we go. We got different enemy here. We can delete them. As you can see, so everything is spawning properly without any issues. Like even if I delete it after how many seconds? After Yep, after 2 seconds it spawns. So that's it. I see that we've got us a spawning mechanics for the enemy. And next point would be is to create a logic for those enemies. And as far as I can see is um, the best logic would be is for this bee and slug. I mean, definitely they're gonna advance forward, but the bee is gonna advance much faster because it's flying. And the slug will advance slower, but it's gonna have more health. And as far as I can say, as you can see, is as soon as they reach one of the towers, they're gonna start, just hitting it. And of course, both of them will have different attack points and health and speed. So those points we'll do them in the next episode. And then after that, we're gonna integrate, or actually make sure to put the integration between both the enemy and the towers. But that's for next episodes. I hope you liked this episode. It was quite fun to get back this series after a while. And if you got any more questions, please hit the comments below or join our Discord, where you can find a lot of talented people who can help you also with your game or anything that you're doing. And hit the like and subscribe because, help me help you. Alright everybody, I'll see you all next one. Bye bye.